Okay, and we are live this time. Welcome to the Eat Well, Move Well radio show. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. My guest today, I don't often do the intro here correctly, but I'll get it right. Troy Knight, a father, a veteran, an author, Australian combat controller. Troy, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming back.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure. I'm always happy to do round two. I'll do a round three if you ever get, bored. But like I said to you previously, I feel like I'm in the land of giants with some of the people you've interviewed. I'm not up to that standard by any means. So, we'll go from there.
I'm glad that you started it that way, because that was actually the angle I was taking on the intro. Look, for the listeners and the viewers, there was a recording fail on this. We recorded this show last week and we're doing it again. And Troy is such a humble guy. And you said many times, Troy, you're in the company of giants. Well, you really are in the company of giants for the replay, because a Delta Force Sergeant Major that I interviewed, Dutch Moyer, we had to do a replay as well.
Oh. So, well, now I don't feel so bad, because I felt like I let you down and I didn't do the best podcast. It was just like, are you being humble and just saying, hey, look, we need to record, or did I just stuff it up? So hopefully it's
not at all. It was all on me. It was great chatting last time, and we're going to go through the same sort of stuff and maybe have a little more insight to it. But what I'm going to do first for the listeners and the viewers is tell people where to find you, because I think a lot of shows, and I've listened to tons. I remember my first podcast was about 8 years ago with what they called Bulletproof Radio. You got to wait to the end to find things out. But I'll literally put it down now. You want to find Troy, go to troyknight.com.au, and what a brilliant, easy way to find you there. Your link tree on Instagram is brilliant. It's got all the details there. HAVOC-06.com with the book that we're going to speak to. But if the listeners and viewers can take that, and we'll do it at the end as well, take that and start looking at those websites. Troy, I've got you on today to ask about your book, and I asked you a question, and I haven't asked anybody that's an author. I've got a lot of different guys I've interviewed that have penned books, but I asked that key question: what the hell made you want to write a book, and how did you manage it? And since last time we talked, I've looked into you a little bit more, done even more background, and it's really interesting with the co-author. But I'd really like to get your side of what made you want to write a book, inspired you to write a book, considering, you're an Air Force guy, SF operator for combat controlling. It's a really different bent. So can you talk us through that chapter of your life, if you will?
Yeah, I'd never planned on writing a book. Everyone always used to sit there and say, because I was always the guy at the boozer who would always tell a story and make people laugh. I love making people laugh. It's always been something for me. So, we had like a vote one time, at what we call roll call, which is our annual, where we welcome new HAVOCs into the team and stuff like that. We have an annual sort of do. And I was voted most likely to write a book. And I laugh, because I avoided, like most operators, you avoid doing the computer work. But as you know, you need to do the administrative instructions. You need to do all the risk management just to get outside the door. So I got out, and people said to me, you've got one hell of a story. Why don't you tell it? And I just went, oh, okay. And it was a new challenge for me to actually use correct punctuation and grammar. And I still struggle with that. So there's no issues there. I'm happy to admit that. But so I wrote the book. I utilised Brooke Strawn, my co-author. How we met was she illustrated a picture for Soldier on Australia, and I bid on that, and I won the bid, and I donated it to an organisation, and we just started chatting. And then I read her books, like her fiction novels, Subject 1, Subject 2, and there was some amazing writing. And I just went, you know what, I do need help with writing. I do need help with the author side of things. So I utilised Brooke, and that's the way we went together, and that's the way the book went. And then it's just I won't say spiraled out of control, but it's just like it's gained a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So yeah,
Snowballed well.
That's the way it went.
So she's a civilian, like, so you had a co-author. What was it like working with someone and sort of retelling your story and I guess translating it into real words?
We had our struggle together. She's not 100% civil, like she is a civilian now, but she's had military experience as well as worked for other organizations and stuff like that. So she's not completely benign to, verbiage and wordage and stuff like that. So, but working with someone was difficult, especially because we did it all 100% separate. So we'd be FaceTiming or ringing each other on a daily basis. And she's like, what do you mean by this? Like she's saying, and then she's giving me deadlines. Like she kept me in check. It was awesome. And then I'm just going, no, I don't like that. So we backed and forth, over a lot of things. So it was tough, but we worked it out and we got it done. It was pretty amazing project.
So let's go through what the book's about. Again, I'm trying to paint that picture well using your words for the listener. What's HAVOC-06 about at its core?
Yeah, so HAVOC-06 is my call sign. As a combat controller, you get your own individual call sign. It's a HAVOC number, and mine was 06. I was the 6th combat controller. But it's about, I suppose it's a love story with, if I want to describe it, it's a love story with aviation integration with special operations. It talks about the smiles and cries of my life and the standing up of Australia's newest special operations regiment. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know how better to describe it, like without sitting there and sort of telling chapter by chapter, which will bore your listeners one bit. But
from our stories last time, and I'll get you to go through those as well. I'm sure it's a hell of a ride. Let's talk about what that combat controller was or role is, because it's a very not benign, but very exact verbiage, I guess. We talked about airstrikes last time. Really, in a combat controller is that person who's calling in air support to help the guys on the ground. You talked about integrating, a love story of integration between Air Force and special operations. So let's talk about what your role is on operations while you're embedded with a special forces unit.
Yeah, so through my multiple deployments, I sat through many roles. I was a joint terminal attack controller, which calls the bombs off the aircraft in support of the ground forces. So when we're in a big enough fight and it meets the rules of engagement, laws of armed conflict, I can legally drop bombs off the aircraft. So that's one role. Other roles are what we call global access, where I can survey. Well, I used to be able to survey. I don't do it now because I'm out. So yeah, it's one of those things when you move on. Like I've been out for 12 months now, but I still use past tense rather than current tense.
We do, yeah.
I can survey a piece of ground to land an aircraft, and I can also provide air traffic control, like safety of flight for that aircraft. So I can provide aircraft with information on where other aircraft are in the sky, as well as like landing coordination.
So essentially you're like a mobile combat air traffic control.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I never knew that about the role. What I learned from you, which really blew my mind, because my life's pinnacle at that time, I'm working on writing new chapters, as John McPhee suggests. But my life's pinnacle at the time was selection for commandos for New Zealand SAS, and to get through the training and be an operator. But your job was Air Force combat controller. You spoke that you had to go through Australian commando selection and then their whole training cycle.
Yeah, that's correct. So because we're so small here in Australia, it's a joint selection. SASR are still doing there. I won't go into it too much because there's obviously TTPs involved in that and probably everything above pay grade. But combat control do the same selection as 2 commando regiment, and then I went through the full commando reinforcement cycle. So I graduated as a low level, like because they're called 079s. That's their sort of ECN, their combat number. I don't claim to be a commando. I got presented with a beret and presented with a Sykes-Fairbairn dagger because I graduated. But we went on to do other training after that, where another 6 months of training after that, and then went from there. So I'm definitely not commando. I don't claim to be a commando. I've got the utmost respect for the boys, but I've just I've done the same basic level of training. So,
but I mean, from my view as an operator, I need someone beside me, and you're beside me. You're doing a slightly different role that I can't perform. But if we get in the shit, I'm going to trust that you are trained, that you pass those things, and we can operate beside each other safely and hopefully win the fight. So from my view, that's full acceptance. And I think you spoke to that when we chatted last time about your ability to embed in the units.
Yeah, it was tough because I was one of the first guys to, like, there were guys before me, but I was one of the first guys to embed with the 2nd Commando Regiment and go on the Special Operations Task Group rotation. So it was tough. Like, you looked at as the outsider, but giving that you've had the same level of training, like you've walked the walk, you've talked the talk with the boys. People sit there and you sort of get vouched for. Like, people sit there and go, nah, he's done it. Like, he did selection with me. He's good to go. So you get given the benefit of doubt from senior operators that you haven't worked with. And then obviously you prove yourself down the track with them when you're in the battlefield or, through training activities, and you go from there. So I was lucky in that regard.
Brilliant. I interviewed Dan Pronk, and I was very lucky to be able to interview him. And again, I like to organically get to know a guest during the show. I think things come out that the viewers really appreciate. I was stunned to hear that the regimental doctor went himself and did SAS selection.
Yeah, Pronky's a bit of a, he's an overachiever. Like, we've all got these people from school. I'm sure it was the same growing up in New Zealand, but we've all got those people that's an overachiever. So doctor, that's a big deal in my eyes. Like, you go through a 7-year degree, went through selection. Unfortunately for him, I don't know the full story, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I believe he got pulled off halfway through reinforcement cycle because he had a return of service obligation for his, for becoming a medical, professional. So I don't know. I don't want to comment on Dan's behalf, but I know for a fact that he kept operators alive, and he kept operators alive in certain situations for longer than what they should have been. Like, these ones passed away, unfortunately, but he was doing live blood transfusions. He's an exceptional human being, and I can't talk highly enough about him. And then obviously reading his, Timmy and his brother Ben, reading their book Resilience Shield, like, there's some amazing lessons learned out of that. Like, it's
that book and Ollie Ollerton's book and talking to a few people has really got me out of that black hole. But Dan Pronk, I know my regimental doctor in New Zealand SAS, and there's zero way she's beside the operators in the sandpit shooting to save each other's lives. So Pronky spoke too in my show. The operators would take him out on operations, and that's just unheard of as the regimental doctor. He's like, in our minds, they're the geek back at base that does their skill set, keeps you alive. But
we use the term strap hangers. There's always a strap hanger.
Well, I was just stunned to hear it from him that he was going on operations and literally in the thick of it. So I started this part of the conversation off, we accept you guys because you've done the same training as us, as one of us. I wanted to ask you, though, I missed a few questions. It's the beauty of doing a replay. What was the hardest part of selection for you?
It was. So selection for me was difficult in itself. Like, I am not the fittest person. I got sick. Like, I came down with a virus or something. I don't know what it was. I refused to go to medical. I was bedridden for 2 weeks beforehand, and I copped the course a lot of push-ups because I stuffed up. I didn't prepare myself correctly. I didn't write, everything, my Reggie number and everything the way I was supposed to do it. And I couldn't do the push-ups. So I copped the course, a lot of push-ups for that. But it's funny, I had people on that course sit there going, just do the push-ups. And I can normally do about 100 push-ups and cadence push-ups. So nothing spectacular, I know, but these are full push-ups. But on course, I couldn't do 8. Like, we did 8 push-ups and I couldn't do 8. So I'm falling on my face. I just lacked the strength at the time. But people who were next to me were sitting there going, hey, Troy, hey, candidate so-and-so. We didn't know each other by that name, by that stage. So I'm like, hey, they're going, hey, candidate so-and-so, pick your game up. You're costing us, strength. And I'm just going, I'm trying. But the funny thing was, I was there at the end and I got selected when these guys weren't. So I laugh at that. So that was the tough part, the initial couple of days. I actually got stronger through selection, if that makes sense. Yep. I actually got some nutrition back into me and finished a lot stronger than what I did at the start. But my amphibious operators course, so not subsurface, above surface course, it was 2 weeks. It was 16, just over 2 weeks. It was 16 days at a HMAS Cerberus, and it was cold, it was miserable, and I didn't sleep for pretty much 16 days. It was brutal. So that was the hardest physical parts. Mentally, the JTAC course is pretty, like, when you're dealing with a 3D awareness, and I talk about a fourth dimension as well, and we can all talk about, I refer to the fourth dimension as something similar to, sci-fi movies, where you've got that sort of parallel universe, but you've got a 3D dimension. I'm battle tracking commandos or SASR around, or any, special operations forces.
Yep.
I'm trying not to put aircraft together. I'm trying not to drop bombs on my own people. So mentally, that dragged it out. So those 3 would be the biggest ones.
I think that shows what selecting a special forces operator is about. And you did that without even trying it. That special forces operator is that person that can continue to be mentally tough, and that doesn't just mean still going, but it can be mentally able under extreme fatigue and extreme pressure. And that's kind of what you just said. You kept on going through. I mean, to be bedridden 2 weeks before literally the Olympic finals, which is what selection's like, is phenomenal. So then talking about JTAC, which is a high level of intellectual, it's out of my skill set. And we started this conversation that you weren't good so good with punctuation and so on. I think that shows the mettle of someone that obviously got to your level. But you talked about not dropping bombs in the right places, essentially. And I know I asked you that tough question, and I wanted to ask you it again. We've talked about what your role is. We talked about what it's taken you to get there through that special forces training. Haven't talked so much about the actual Air Force side, but on the ground on operations, what's it like to drop a danger close ordnance to save your guys?
Sorry, mate, just give me a second here. I just it's not collect my thoughts. It's an emotional process, because it still brings up a lot of emotions, because I second guess myself from this day. Like, I've dropped multiple danger close, but yeah, it is. So we had a day in 2012 where I had several good mates get shot. We had to bring in medevac aircraft. We're in Helmand province, and Helmand province is a different beast. The Taliban, a lot of them are foreign fighters, and they still were in 2012, but they are actually really well trained. It's like going up against, say, NZ infantry company or an NZ or an Australian infantry company. Like, guys are foreign moving. Guys are, they're presenting you with problems. Like, you know, you've got support by fire and assault by fire. Like, people are like, and that's the Taliban. So it was a different beast. Yeah, so I dropped Danger Close. It was for a good mate of mine who I went through selection with. My then wife and his current wife knew each other. I knew his daughter at the time, and it was pretty emotional. I brought an F16 within 35 meters. That's for a 20 mil strafe within 35 meters of his position. But that was for also, so it wasn't just him. Like, there was a commando team positioned to extract him. Like, you know, that was suppressing fire on the orchard. So
did he call it? Did he ask you to do that, or did you?
No, I came up with the game plan because the boys couldn't get to him because of the fire was so intense, I suppose. They couldn't get to him. He's fighting for his life. So he's returning fire. He's done all the, you know, the tactical first aid side of things. So he's returning fire, even though he's been hit, and he's fighting for his life, and he's trying to crawl out of there, but he can't leave his position, and the boys can't get to him. And I came up with a game plan with the boss. I said, look, I wasn't in that position at the time. I was in a bit of another gunfight out of it, but I was in a secure compound. So it was a lot different for me. I'm talking to the aircraft, the F-16, the flight lead for the F-16's like, I don't know if I can do this. And my call sign at the time was Anzac. That's what we deployed with. And he's going, I don't know if I can do this, Anzac. And I'm just going, look, I need you because we're going to lose more guys. I need this. And I always had that, every time I dropped, I always had that dry mouth, that I was about to vomit type scenario.
Jesus.
Like, I was always second guessing. I was double checking grids. I was double checking all the information. That was me. I know a lot of other guys are a lot smoother with it than what I am, but that was me. And yeah, brought the strafe in. The boys got up to him and I brought another strafe. The lead spun around and he re-attacked and he re-strafed the area, and the boys dragged him back after that. So we got, a guy I called D-Man. I can't say his name because he's still, he's a senior team commander and he's still an operator, but yeah, we got D-Man out that day. But yeah, we took more casualties that day as well. And, you know, the medevac crew that come in from the US side was absolutely brilliant. The team commanders who just, and you would have seen it, but when you got multiple teams on the ground, the team commanders just take charge and then just giving radio orders. Like, they're just going, yeah, moving here, moving there, clearing here. And I'm trying to battle track everyone. I'm trying to, like, by battle track, I mean, you know, just for your viewers, understand where everyone is. So when I drop bombs, I don't drop bombs on friendly. So yeah, Danger Close. I don't know how to explain the emotion. It does make me emotional just talking about it. Yeah. So apologies for that.
No, please don't apologize, Troy, because I mean, I think I was reading the page, what is it, Silent Dispatch. They're amazing Instagram page. And I think
they certainly unleash a bit of shade on people. That's for sure.
They do. They're as brutal as they come. And I think one of the operators said, if you weren't emotional that day, you were at the back. People often think of SF operators and soldiers as just knuckle draggers, just cavemen, but it's not that way at all. I just want to unpack that a little bit. Did you ever get a chance to talk to D-Man, what it was like from his side, what his viewpoint was with that?
I did. Well, like, we still chat to this day, and he was so focused on returning fire and making it out of there. He said he had a bit of a auditory sort of, you know, closure, like everything's sort of shut down. As you know, like, things shut down, you get tunnel vision sometimes. So he was focused on returning fire and saving his life. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you know, chatting to him, chatting to the team commander who was there at the time, going, yep, this is the game plan. This is what's happening. So yeah, he just said he sort of had a bit of, you know, shut out. But funnily enough, or not funnily enough, but 6 weeks later, he survived. Like, he'd been to Kandahar and then went to Germany, and then he was back at work. Like, he was back stomping the hills of Helmand province with us 6 weeks later. Wow. So after having a bullet wound in the leg. So that's full testament to him, and, you know, the two commandos sort of warrior spirit that just want to get amongst it. So
100%. I'm glad we have gone through this again, because I did miss the part, and you started touching on there about the medevac. Is that the same as what we see on the TV show with the American medevacs? They get the call, they're out there, and there's two ships coming in. How was that coordinated, and what did that involve?
yeah, so I coordinated 3 medevacs, CASIVACs, whatever you want to call them. I don't know the differentiality between it. You put in a 9-line for it. So the crew that came in for us the first time, and it was the crew for all 3 times, they come in a single ship, like one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one UH-60, or one specially decked out UH-60. They were American Army, and they came in. I stuffed up, like I'd been dropping a couple of bombs by that stage. We'd been in a few gunfights pretty much since early morning, and the first one happened at about 8:30 in the morning. And I normally, with the medevac, I'd give them a radial. Like I'd say, look, here's your grid, but I want you to fly in over radial, say 180, which comes in from the south.
Right.
And approach, like I'd give them a radial. That's like an air deconfliction thing that a JTAC does. I didn't do that. So, and I didn't give them a landing zone brief. I didn't, say to them, hey, look, landing zone is hot. There's multiple casualties. There's this, there's that. Like I didn't give them. I was just maxed out because I was in a bit of a gunfight myself. And basically, long story short, I stuffed up, I suppose. They came in, and RPG, like there's an RPG, like when you see an RPG explode, it makes a certain noise, but you see the explosion. So they came in, and all I saw was RPGs exploding around them.
Wow.
Come in, landed, boom, casualty in, casualty out. And they come in another 2 times that day. And second and third time was a lot more, let's say, controlled over my behalf. Like I did a better job. I learned from my lesson. But I still speak to, one of the medics. I still speak to the door gunner. And it's just like, like I actually requested them second time in. I said, I want this regiment, this aviation regiment. I don't want anyone else. If you're going, so they like when you see in the movies where they come in with Apaches and everything's, it didn't happen. Like we were in a pretty decent gunfight, and they came in a single ship, landed, and boom, and made it happen. Like the pilot, the crew, everyone.
Did the door gunners open up a bit? The door gunners did open up a bit. So I think they're classified as like the crew chiefs as well. Like I don't know the exact term. Yeah. But the crew chiefs, they definitely opened up as they were coming in. So that gets me that technical question. You got operators on ground or shooters on the ground. You got you as a combat controller controlling the air assets. Now the medevacs come in. Do they just fire under their own steam? What goes on there? Because they don't really know what the hell's going on.
No, they don't, but they're pretty good. They only fire at sort of identified targets, and they could identify targets. Like they knew exactly, like there was no sort of chance of, blue on blue or blue on green. Like they weren't going to blow up our partner force, and they weren't going to shoot us by any means. So they took fire. They saw where the RPGs come from. They saw where the small arms fire. And under the rules of engagement, or back at the time, it's self-defense. So they are allowed to fire on everything that, that was trying to shoot them out of the sky. So.
And what an amazing job the F16 pilot must be able to do to be able to come around and, tell us what speed they fly at, but then putting the same bullets down in the same place.
Yeah. I ended up meeting, so that was an F16 crew out of Kandahar, and I ended up flying down to Kandahar later that year. I did some jobs with a unit called Task Force down there, and I met the F16 pilot, and we talked it over, over a Starbucks coffee. We sat there, and he's just like, holy shit, Troy, I was shitting myself. Like he was a guy who had 20 years experience, a flight lead. He was a lieutenant colonel, and he's brought it around, come in for a low angle strafe, pulled off, and goes, yep, I'm back around. He goes, you need a reattack. I'm back around again. And so he's pulling high angle turns and G-forces like there's no tomorrow. And he's like, I'm back in. I said, yep, give me 30 seconds. And and he came back in, and off he went. So.
Wow. Wow.
And then he let his dash too, the junior guy, the 23-year-old or whatever who's just passed, he let him drop some bombs. He's like, oh yeah, that's the danger stuff done now. So yeah.
It's a different world, isn't it? It really is.
Oh.
Which sort of brings me to the next chapter in your life. And I titled this show Finding Purpose and a Sense of Belonging, because now you're in a completely different chapter of your life, and really only 12 months out for the military, like you said. We touched on transition and things, but last time, now you're a former Australian Air Force combat controller. Now you're a father, an author, a board member, resilience coach, mental health advocate, and speaker. Where do we start? What's it like transitioning out of that identity, that guy who's got all those radio channels and all those assets around him and people depending on his skill set, to where you are now in the next chapter, which I would suggest is snowballing well and is very successful as well. Could you talk us through what that's like?
To be honest, it was rough, like transferring out. Like I didn't expect to, I had set goals on doing certain things in the military, didn't achieve it due to mental health, and mental health's one of those things. And I don't use it for an excuse in any way, shape or form. Like I still try to achieve, but there's days where I can't get out of bed and there's days where I achieve whatever I need to. But it was tough. And it wasn't until I heard a podcast from a woman, and she's a former Australian officer, Sarah Watson, and I worked with her in the RSL Young Veterans. And I heard a podcast of hers, and she talked about redeveloping, that sense and that purpose in life. And I just went, it just resonated with me. So I did that. I was lucky enough, obviously, to get the deals from, the publishing house with the book, and then moved into and then people just go, oh, look, we want to hear you dribble. Like I just call it dribble. So we want to hear you dribble, like, come talk to some of the young people and invigorate them. So I just kind of fell into it. And my partner, Bree, and she says it all the time. She sits there and goes, you're like a cat with 9 lives. I can drop you off a balcony and you always fall on your feet. Like, I don't know how it is. I can't explain it. Obviously, there's a little bit, I do a little bit of stuff in behind the scenes myself. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough. That's why I volunteer a lot of my time with Due South Australia, which is a not-for-profit organisation, and I was with the Return Services League of New South Wales, their Young Veterans Committee. I've had to move on from that one only because I don't live in New South Wales anymore. But it's if I can have a conversation and help one person transition over, then I've achieved something. And it's all about paying it forward.
And people like us that are self-driven, that's why we pass those selection barriers. We don't often need it spoon-fed to us. Often that if you can say one thing to help one person, that just might be the start, the first step, that the little push on the bike that helps them on their way.
Yeah.
You spoke about with Sarah Watson, just that one listen to her podcast or listen to that one idea of hers started to get you on your way. So you don't have to hold that person by the hand, but if people are listening to this and that one thing you said helps, then I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly right there. So I can't add anything more to that. So you've just summed it up. So
look, we talked about some pretty intense things. I didn't know the story until you told it last time.
Which one are we talking about now?
Yeah, and you're great at it, mate. You really are in such a good way. Even despite the Kiwi-Aussie rivalry. And I love the shirt you got on there, proudly representing the league team.
Brisbane Broncos.
There was a parachuting story you spoke about, and I think that led to a nickname.
Yes, it led to the Chook Shed guy. So I've got many nicknames over the years, but my parachuting indiscretion, free fall course, getting out at we're under oxygen. I won't name the height because I don't know if that's legal thing around, but let's say commercial. So what a commercial airliner flies at, I'm under oxygen, 3 levels of clothing on. It's minus 37 Celsius degrees. I get out, my instruments freeze, have a good exit, instruments freeze. I remember my parachute jump master brief, which was keep the river to the right. So that's all I did. So headed in the right direction. We had a dive compass on, so that didn't freeze because, as you know, dive compasses are pretty good.
So headed in the right. I think.
What's that?
Filled with oil, so the freezing point would be different.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. So that kept me in the right direction. I kept the river on my right. Kept going. Realised I was losing height once everything, like, because you got your altimeter on and stuff like that. Realised, well, sorry, left hand's altimeter, but realised I wasn't going to make the drop zone. I was about 400 metres short. Didn't pick my out. One thing that we do is we try to pick our outs at when I say out, like an alternate drop zone. Didn't do that. I was a bit arrogant, a bit cocky. Didn't do that to a very low height, and went, yeah, I can land there. At the time, I'd already had 500 jumps. Like I finished the military with over 1,000 jumps, couple of a dozen base jumps as well and stuff like that. But didn't pick it, so stuffed up. Tried to land into a field, like someone's paddock. It was probably about 50 by 50. So I'm cutting brake turns at night time under MVGs, and it's zero lume, so there's no moonlight out to, as you know, help illuminate your MVGs.
Yep, that ambient light.
Duffed up, hit a chook shed, hit someone's house. So I had a heavily wooded area, creek line one side, power lines. As you know, you never go towards power lines. Like a bunch of horse stables, and then houses. So couldn't judge the wind. There was pretty much no wind at the time. So I'm trying to look at my wind because my GPS had come back to, and I'm trying to judge the wind with the drive of the canopy.
Yep.
Couldn't do that. Anyway, long story short, hit this chook shed. I ended up amongst a lot of chooks. And by chooks, I mean chickens for listeners that I don't know. Very fun. Didn't hurt a chicken. Didn't hurt myself. Didn't actually hurt the canopy. Made a loud bang, and went from there. So went in, saw the people who owned the house. They were watching TV literally 30 metres away at the time. Didn't hear it. So we obviously fixed the chicken house, paid them a bit of retribution from the Australian Defence Force, and I walked off with my ego trailing behind me. So so I'm probably known on the parachute training school side of things as that chook shed guy. Like, everyone knows me as that guy.
Oh, mate, it's good that you didn't come up away with injuries. I've had some horrendous stories from air troop guys, especially, as you said, in paddocks, like going through the fences. Jesus, we often use a metal picket, for the want of a better word, a metal spike to hold the fences up. But yeah, some horrendous stories. And John McPhee talked about one of his combat jumps. He dropped and ended up with a compound fracture of his leg that he just bandaged up and then carried on walking with.
See, this is where I say that I'm in the likes of greatness in the land of giants, like John McPhee, like Shrek, like you've interviewed him, and he's an absolute legend. So,
oh mate, we're all cut from the same cloth. I mean, he talked to me about the different chapters of life. Where are you? If your life was a book, where the hell are you? In the middle, or are you at the end? And that's really where you're at. Is you've moved on to a new chapter, and it's just phenomenal to hear and share your story of you stepping forward to becoming an author, and then resilience coach as well. You talked about some of the corporate speaking or public speaking you're doing, and talked about the difference there. But you're coaching one of the Nitro Circus guys.
Yeah. One of the Nitro Circus FMX riders. He's on board with the HAVOC-06 team. The way because HAVOC-06 is more from just being a book title into an actual brand name now. So he's over there at the moment. There's not much coaching I need to do with him. He's pretty freaking brilliant. Like, he snapped his femur, and he does some amazing things. and he's going to be part of the Nitro Circus World Tour here in October 22 and 23. And look out for, he's going to be pulling a pretty big trick there. So he's pretty amazing. Yeah, J.O. Archer, or Jay Archer, we all know him as J.O. So yeah, if any of the listeners want to get out and follow him, he's part of the HAVOC-06 team. He's part of many teams, but he's just such an inspirational character. Like he's half my age, but I get so much inspiration just from hanging around him. It's pretty amazing. Like he's a smart individual. Like everyone sits there and goes, oh, because you must ride motocross, or, you know, it's the same with SF operators. Everyone thinks we're knuckle draggers or something like that.
Yep.
Everyone sits there with the, you know, freestyle motocross riders, but he's such an intelligent guy, highly driven. He gets up at like anywhere between 3 and 4 in the morning and just trains his ass off. Like his rehabilitation for like a completely snapped femur is second to none. I can't talk highly enough about him. So
it's motivated people really blow me away. But what, especially in my world with the interviewing, it amazes me to connect with people. You know, I'd actually, thinking about it now, the reason you and I connected was because of the Instagram page that I was talking about, Silent Dispatch. That's how I'd heard about HAVOC-06.
I actually don't 100% know who runs Silent Dispatch. So
I don't think anybody should. I don't think anybody should, considering what they put on there.
No. I know they did like a little spiel about me and stuff like that, and it was much appreciated. And I sent them out a massive thanks for it, because, you know, it's always awesome to get a bit of, you know, as you know, you got to always market yourself and stuff like that when you move in. But yeah, I don't actually, honestly, don't actually know who runs it. So
because it's a true indication of quality. That's what I'd have to put it down to. So again, for the listeners and the viewers, this is a Instagram page or social media channel run by Special Forces operators, probably we'll say past Special Forces operators. And when people in your world say, hey, check out this thing, or check out this guy, or check out this book, we automatically go, sure, because they're a trusted source. So I checked out HAVOC-06 and went, man, I got to talk to this guy. So there's the start of the connection.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure to have a former operator like yourself sort of reach out and, you know, have a chat. It's and then, yeah, before I chat to anyone on a podcast, I obviously do my research and listen to previous podcasts, and you've had some amazing people on it. And I mean, even little Izzy, like she does some amazing things. So I'm hoping you'll hear it here first, but I'm hoping to bring her over to the HAVOC-06 team as well. Just depends on where she is in life and what goes on. But I think she'd be a great ambassador for the HAVOC-06 team.
Absolutely. I was going to bring up Izzy. So Isabella Rossitano, what is it? The Aussie Ferocity now on Instagram, I think.
Yeah.
I think that
absolute lethal weapon.
Oh, I think their name got changed. So she was on SAS Australia Hell Week. Really interesting. I interviewed her to get her side. So we've got Ollie's side as a DS. We got Dan's side as literally almost the neutral guy in the middle, and then we got a what do you call them? Candidate side. But she's got a finger in all sorts of pies. She's a phenomenal athlete, boxing and so on, into arm wrestling. And I think her Instagram handle changed after she literally snapped the girl's arm.
And again, the girl's arm she snapped was on steroids. Like, so she's snapped her arm.
Wow.
Yeah. So that didn't, like, that's local knowledge. But she smashed her in the arm wrestle. Obviously been on SAS Australia. Yeah. Yeah. Olympic level boxer, Olympic level canoeist. Like, you know.
I didn't know that, Troy. I knew that canoeing. So on a website, we looked at that, but I didn't know she was at that level boxing. Wow.
Yeah, she's pretty good. She's pretty good. And then she wrestles as well, I believe. So
she looks like a natural athlete. And again, on the show, just so humble. You know, she was on the other side. So that's the point I was making sort of 5 minutes ago. With technology and in this space, allows us to connect with people that you would, you know, maybe see on the news or see on an interview somewhere, but we actually can connect with those people and then share their stories out there. I think it's for the greater good, really. Yeah,
I think so. And it's all about, you know, in my eyes, it's all about just having a conversation. And, you know, because I'm, you know, like yourself, I'm a big mental health advocate. And if I can have a conversation, if I can help one person, like I did my time on the battlefield. It's funny how things flip, because my partner is a homicide detective and I worry about her every day when she goes to work. And I used to deploy for months on end and it didn't worry me, but when you're on the other side, it worries you. So it's, if you can just have one conversation and help one person out, then I think you've done good in the world.
I agree. You talked about paying it forward. Let's just roll back a bit to something you said about mental health. And it was really open. And that's, again, what I love about chatting with you. You talked about some days you can't even get out of bed, and some days you're on it. Eric Miari's was a really interesting cat that I interviewed. His purpose is preventing veteran suicide, which I love. But he likened mental health injuries. What if, just let's think, what if we treat it like a physical injury? So I've got a little bone issue in my ankle. It hurts sometimes, and sometimes it's great. What if we treat it like a physical injury? Oh, I'm having a bad day today on the ankle, so I'm going to give it a bit of TLC, and some days you're great. Literally, you just said that same thing with your experience there. Some days you can't get out of bed, some days you're all over it. That would change our perception of mental health to just being something we need to address if and when it's needed, and take the stigma away.
Yeah, I agree. It's I see it, and believe me, I see it from, I see it through my, you know, my partner, and she's 100% fine, but I see it with the way that the policing service works with it. And it's just like, all right, I'm not in a good way. I'm taking a mental health day, and they're awesome with it. But if I said that originally through the Defence Force, I'd have to still present. They're getting better now. So I think the police force is probably doing a little bit better than what the Defence Force does, because it's just an injury. It's not just an injury, but if I present with a broken ankle, what's that different to a broken, you know, brain cell or something like that? You know what I mean? So.
Totally. I understand what I'm loving about, look, it's the best of a bad situation, I guess. The veterans, and clever veterans like yourself, and speaking out, are raising awareness of it not being a weakness, of being just, okay, well, this part of my brain isn't functioning so good. This part's going really good, which is the fight and flight part. I need some assistance to get this part going again, be it through a traumatic experience or through, what about a brain injury? You know, taking too many explosives too close to the body. It could be through a bunch of different things. And then from the veterans' high-end experience, that can be extrapolated to the civilian, you know, a mum who's been in a mugging or anything like that. It can still have that same result of, here's how I'm feeling, here's what I'm experiencing, and here's some solutions out of it.
Yeah, exactly right. That's how do I put it? Whilst I donate a lot of my time to the, you know, former military veterans and current military, as well as first responders, it's not something that's like, it doesn't shy away from the community. Like, no. You know, if someone suffers a traumatic event in the community, they're going to go through exactly the same thing. And you talk about the fight or flight, like the different part of the brain. And I won't go into scientifics, because I'm actually fascinated with psychology, and I read the DSM, being the psychology manual. I read it quite, even though it's a massive book and it gets updated every year, but I quite often read through it, because I'm fascinated with the way the brain works, and I want to understand what goes on in my head. Absolutely. And it's like, if someone from the community goes through that traumatic event, then they're going to go through the same brain. Like, it's just going to change the brain process.
Brain changes. I was just going to say the same thing.
Yeah. And we need to accept that. It's just like, hey, I'm on the touch footy field and I roll my ankle, because the ankle has changed, you know, angles. The brain has changed its angle, and then things are going differently.
you're going to love the shows that are coming up. They've already interviewed them, but they're posting up soon. So Mark Matheson, I don't know if you know him, but he was the SASR psychologist for a long time.
I think I don't know him. I think I've heard of the name.
So interesting cat, and he's now in the civilian world. He was the psychologist for SAS Australia, Bachelor, all these things.
That might have been where I'd heard him from. Not that I watch Bachelor. I just want to keep my man rating out there. I don't watch Bachelor.
Nice save. And then and unrelated, but I mean, we've already talked about Dan Pronk and Resilience Shield, and what a brilliant tool. Commander Joe Tory, so commander being naval commander in US Navy. He's a deep sea expert, but he underwent a traumatic brain injury in a car accident himself, and used all his skill sets to bring that back. And he will literally get anybody in America or anywhere that's in our world over to his lab in Florida, University of South Florida, and I think he used about 6 or 7 different modalities, no side effects, so not like a antidepressant drug that has a suicidal side effect listed on the insert. He's got 6 or 7 modalities there, hyperbaric oxygen, and a whole bunch of different things. And what a result he gets. But definitely some really cool things coming out on the treatment of mental health issues, I suggest.
Yeah. Now, there's definitely been some major, I think, advancements or jumps forward, with the use of, and it's a nasty word here in Australia because I think we're still locked in the 80s, but, psychedelics, psilocybin and stuff like that. But you've only got to look at what's been done in the US, UK. Like, it might not have been done in that sort of thing, in those countries, but they've done them, as long as you're not going to some shaman and hanging out in an Indian teepee.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a pharmaceutical drug with proper doctors and nurses, and it's getting results, it's like, like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to sit here and trip balls by any means, but if it helps in any way, then I'm all for it. So.
Now, that was the attitude that Joe Tory went and goes, well, this thing won't harm you and it's going to help a little bit. And then he just literally put a cocktail of things together, of different things. He went, well, why not throw the kitchen sink at it? And nobody is as motivated as someone who wants to get themselves out of pain. So you'll love the show, and there's some more coming out.
Can't wait.
I want to touch on Due South because it's in the show notes, but Due South Australia is one of the not-for-profits you work with.
Yes, definitely. So based out of Tasmania, just caught up with the boys on the weekend. When I say the boys, there's 4 directors. There's a 5th person involved. He doesn't really want to be named because he just sort of likes to be behind the scenes. But there's 3 of us boys, all former military. One's also done emergency services, and then Jo, she's like the pretty face, and she brings a bit of decorum and prestige to her. So she brings a good idea. She stops.
It makes you guys look good.
Yeah, well, not just that, but she stops us making stupid boy decisions, basically. So Jo, and she's emergency services. So it's free accommodation in Tasmania, but part of that free accommodation is like Wi-Fi. We've got mountain bikes. We've got canoes in there. There's a gym. There's everything. So it's what we call a mid-year reset. So we try to link in straight up, and we're linked in with CAMS Cause, a few other big organisations, but we try to link in with other bigger organisations to utilise it so they can run the programs.
Brilliant.
Eventually, going to get Jay down there, like Jay Archer, the Nitro Circus rider. He's going to run some programs and stuff like that. But at the moment, it's just trying to utilise the bigger programs down there with the free accommodation. And it's not just for former veterans. It's for current military veterans, current emergency services, former emergency services. But it's just to give and the accommodation is that large that you can bring your whole family. So you just have like a mid-year reset. So it just gives you that, and it's down in Tasmania. We've got a micro farm down there. We've just picked up a bus from Disaster Relief Australia. That's getting decked out. Queensland Home Improvements helping us out with that. Warfighter Coffee, like I know everyone does stuff, but Warfighter Coffee is helping out massively with it. So those companies are helping out big time with it. The bus will be utilised to transport people around the actual site as well as pick people up from the airport. But that's due south. We just want to provide like a getaway from sometimes you just need to get away and have that reset.
You do. You need to stop that. There's different analogies, but I say stop that bucket from getting filled anymore.
Exactly. So yeah, that's due South Australia.
Oh man, it's on the show notes, duesouthoz.com.au. I want to finish on a story from you.
I always laugh when you sit there and want to finish on a story. It's like, what story are you going to ask me about?
Well, that sounds interesting, and I think it sums you up well from what we've done. Humility and perseverance and a whole bunch of things you emulate very, very well, Troy. Zero Limits Podcast contacted me. I know you've been on their show, and they wanted me to ask you about that time you got knocked out and had to get to the chopper.
Trust the Zero Limits boys to contact you. But yeah, so I had to mark the landing zone for the helos. It was my first when I say job, on my deployment with the Special Operations Task Group in 2010. We're only supposed to be on target for 24 hours, not even that. And because we hadn't been there, the Dutch were the last there, and they were there 6 years ago. We were generating so much intelligence, so they asked us to stay, and we kept staying. So we went up to 5 days. We had no food, no water, limited batteries. I went out to the landing zone to mark the landing zone. The boss, now, mind you, I've got Apache AH-64s on station doing stuff. I've got an A-10 on station, or 2 A-10s. And I've got 2 CH-47s, so 2 Chinooks coming inbound for me.
And so they're the twin rotor, the biggest ones that we've got available.
Yeah. So they're coming inbound. I wanted to mark so you normally mark, well, back in the day, now, and I'm not breaking any sort of secrecy act here. Back in the day, we either marked the landing zone for us anyway with a smoke grenade or what we call a VS-17 panel, so a fluoro. Big piece of material, I suppose. Yep. And the boss goes, we're all hot, and mind you, we're out of ammunition, we've got no radio, so here's a commando company and me, and we're hiding in the rocks like little school kids, like we're hiding from the Taliban, and I'm just calling in strikes off aircraft and stuff like that. So
wow.
We were a bit done because we had 5 days of fighting, like everyone hadn't slept and everyone was done. So boss goes, don't throw smoke. I want you to mark the landing zone with the VS-17 panel. And I'm just looking at him going, what's the difference? Like, I'm going to run out into the open and get shot at, or I can throw a smoke grenade and we all get shot at. Like, so I was kind of like the tethered goat, I suppose. So I ran out, marked the landing zone. The first helo comes in. It looks like it's going to land on me. And so when helos like that are in finals, like they just can't power up and go around well, they can, but then it stuffs up everything. So anyway, misses me. Second one is about to land on me. I'd already been knocked over by the rotor wash. So for the listeners out there, the rotor wash is like the downward pressure from the twin rotor blades, and it pushes you over. Like in a single rotor helo, it still pushes you over. So I'm pushed over. I'm on all fours. I'm carrying at this stage still a lot of equipment. Had the old school air-to-ground radio, had everything else, and like old batteries and stuff like that. I'm on all fours, like trying to crawl out of the area. Got blown over again into the ground. The pack hit me in the back of the head. I literally was out for I don't know, like it was only 30 seconds or something like that. Like it wasn't a bad. I came to though. I was supposed to be on helicopter one, like chalk one. It had already powered up and taken off. I'm on chalk two is powering up. I'm running through a dust cloud and finally get to the helo. It wasn't, if it wasn't for a good mate of mine who was doing the head count on helo one, which I was supposed to be on, he's like going, what are you doing? I haven't given you okay. I haven't got all my guys. So he relayed that to chalk two, and chalk two's like, yep, powered up, powered down, seen me, and I ran on. And the boys thought it'd be hilarious because someone had helmet cam footage of it, and they turned it into that iconic scene of Chariots of Fire. That they all dun 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 dun. I just come running through the clouds. So that's how I got knocked out on the landing zone, and that was my first job with 2 Commando Regiment as an Air Force guy. So I made a lot of, I don't know, maybe there were stuff ups, maybe they weren't, but I made a lot of mistakes that one. And I'd certainly, 10 years down the track, I certainly haven't lived it down, that's for sure.
It's a great video. I saw it on your Instagram there. Absolutely brilliant story. I mean, I can picture it myself, but Jesus, being there for 5 days when you're supposed to be there for 24 hours. I mean, that's why you have to go through those selection processes to be able to endure and still perform the job on the ground.
That was the first job for me in 2010, and it reiterated to me whilst I was with the Commando Regiment. It was like, this is why you do a selection.
Yeah,
this is why, because you learn to just adapt and improvise and overcome. The old saying, adapt, improvise, and overcome.
Exactly. And no more better place to do that than in New Zealand, where we don't have all the gear. Look, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for replaying the show, and we've got a lot of gold there for the listeners. Got some really cool show notes there for everybody to look at. Jump on the links. I'll maybe put a couple more in there. But Troy, like last time, absolute gentleman. I really appreciate your time, and it's just great to share your story. No
worries. It's a pleasure to connect, right? It really has been. So
awesome. All right, man. Well, we'll speak soon. I'll hit pause and we'll crack on. Thank you so much.
Right.